Welcome back, everybody, to the show. A quintessential element of an authoritarian ideology is attacking the access to accurate information. And Trump has been doing that across so many different fronts. Obviously, lately, anytime bad economic figures come out that he feels reflect poorly on his handling of the economy, he literally fires the person who's responsible for that information, even if it's accurate. You have him attacking media outlets if they report on things that he doesn't like. We'll talk about the education assault. But first, history. We previously discussed Trump's involvement in getting Smithsonian museums to change what it is that they're showing in their museums. I'll show you a presser clip, but first he sent out a truly wacky post about this attempt. Again, don't just think about it in terms of the one issue, because you will have defenders of Trump, as often happens, purposely ignore the broader pattern here. So think about the broader attempt to erase. That's what this is. Information Trump doesn't like, however accurate or inaccurate. And that's what this is about. Trump posted the museums throughout Washington, but all over the country, are essentially the last remaining segment of woke. The Smithsonian is out of control, where everything discussed is how horrible our country is, how bad slavery was, and how unaccomplished the downtrodden have been. Nothing about success, nothing about brightness, nothing about the future. Now that reflects poorly on his, what's that thing in here, Cole?
A brain.
Yeah, because notoriously history museums don't talk a ton about the future. Notoriously history museums be looking back. And so just really let's dissect that before getting to the clip. Everything discusses how horrible our country is. Surely not the case, but okay. How bad slavery, like if you look at museums that discuss an exhibit about World War II, we're going to come out looking pretty good. If you look at the second point here, eras like in the African American History Museum, where slavery is the exhibit's focus, yeah, it's going to come off pretty bad because notoriously it was bad. And how unaccomplished the downtrodden have been. Nothing about the future. We are not going to allow this to happen. I've instructed my attorneys to go through the museums and start the exact same process that has been done with colleges and universities. I should have mentioned that too, in these erasure attempts, where tremendous progress has been made. This country cannot be woke because woke is broke. We have the hottest country in the world, and we want people to talk about it, including in our museums. Another thought that was running through my head was they are so selectively, I don't even want to say patriotic because that's the wrong word. I'm extremely patriotic. They are very selective in when they choose to describe themselves as loving our country and when they don't. Trump's whole campaign both times was our country sucks. That make America great again, because we're not great anymore. And if you listened to, you remember the end of his speeches during his campaign, they would play that mysterious music and he would go, everything has gone to hell. We're a third world country. Everyone hates us. We're a nation in serious decline. But the second Trump's in power again, now it's you can only speak about positive things. And obviously, someone who truly loves the country wants to absorb the information accurately about its both good and bad history. He was asked about this as follows.
Thank you, Mr. President. On the Smithsonian, I know that your administration is seeking to weed out a lot of this left-wing spin that's in the museums, but we're seeing...
like how bad slavery was. Left-wing.
From people like Brian Stelter or other commentators that they're insinuating that you are trying to change history according to your narrative. What's your response to that, and is there anything you particularly like to do?
Well, we want the museums to treat our country fairly. We want the museums to talk about the history of our country in a fair manner, not in a woke manner or in a racist manner, which is what many of them, not all of them, but many of them are doing. Our museums have an obligation to represent what happened in our country over the years, good and bad, but what happened over the years in an accurate way. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you, Press. Thank you, Press.
Okay. It is wild he would name drop slavery specifically. They just talk about that so much. I went through the slavery exhibit and it was like slavery, slavery, slavery. Oh my gosh. Now, again, I'm sure, and I've seen defenders of him try to post examples of an exhibit that's not exactly to their liking. And I'm sure I would have changes I'd want to make museums perfect in my image, whatever. But this is a part of, as I said, that pattern, and that's how it should be discussed. His obsession with control, especially over information, access to information, education. And so we've seen that with universities, as I said, with the media. And then, obviously, the museum example, but this trickles down because now there's this obsession. I always say there really were examples of quote-unquote woke becoming far too irrational. There were great examples, and then there were irrational examples of institution shifting in certain ways. But now what we're seeing is that the anti-woke obsession is the deranging variable to a lot of these folks. And it's providing for them a justification to politicize, worse than ever before, institutions like schools. And a recent example of that we've gone over, that more information is being published about, the Washington Post, is this. Oklahoma will test some incoming teachers with America First exam to weed out left-wing views and woke indoctrinators. Teachers from New York and California who apply to teach in Oklahoma, so specifically if they're from liberal states, they'll have a specific test. In Oklahoma, will now have to answer questions meant to screen out woke indoctrinators with left-wing views. The latest attempt by Oklahoma officials to push the state's education system rightward. And I always want to address what the other side is arguing. They'll go, no, we just mean if they're telling kids that they can choose to be, I'm just going to keep using this example, a giraffe, and that they are completely a giraffe if they choose to be, or whatever the silly example. And then they can be a cat and they can use a litter box in the school bathroom. Never happened, but that was one of the stories that they ran with. But we've actually seen with this guy, the head, Ryan Walters, of Oklahoma schools, which is very politicized and very dangerous and exactly motivated by Trump's ideology. Oklahoma to require schools to teach Trump's 2020 election conspiracy theories. So when they grab their tentacles into every aspect of our lives, when Trump is doing all of these efforts towards federal overreach and wanting everything to be exactly aligned with his ideology, this is the end goal. With those economic numbers, with what we're learning about history, and what kids are learning in school about very recent history, being taught that, well, there was, maybe a stolen election. And in response to this, Ryan Walters, I thought, was going to go, no, they're blowing it out of proportion. We're just going to explain both sides of the blah, 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 blah. But then he sent out a post responding and said Trump should have won the 2020 election and that should be taught.
Let's start with that curriculum. Why would you want Oklahoma students exposed to thoroughly debunked election conspiracy theories in the classroom?
Look, I've seen all those headlines too, and here's the reality. Look, President Trump should have won the 2020 election. You look at things like the ballot dumps, you look at the mail-in ballots, you look at the voter fraud, you look at the manipulation by the media in foreign countries, and look, what we've got in the standards are facts. We want critical thinking students, we want critical thinking Americans, we want them to look at the data, look at the statistics, and come to their own conclusion.
Well, apparently what you mean by that, based on your conclusion, is not a correct assessment of the data, of the facts. And so then that really, I think, drills in the panic here from people, which is when Trump nicely uses language like, oh, we're just going to make sure that we learn the good and the bad, but we treat our country fairly. Or when whoever that was, the fitness person, was on CNN saying, I just think that they should talk about this world leader when they're talking about. But the real intention here is, as much as they screamed about left-wing indoctrination, is right-wing indoctrination. How do you continue to perpetuate an ideology that is so fundamentally detached from the facts on the ground, unless you indoctrinate future generations into already buying into some of those premises? Now, you saw there Ryan Walters, and I know some of you were asking, didn't he have some sort of scandal recently? I feel like I remember something, nipples, woman, quote unquote, pubic hair. That was the wording used in the reporting, okay? And you said an investigation was happening. What happened with that? Well, we have an update. I'll flash you back first. So Ryan Walters, superintendent of Oklahoma schools, and he's been in the news a lot for stuff like what I just showed you and being so pro-Trump that he'll honestly fail his students who need him to focus on other things because Oklahoma schools are struggling by focusing on nonsense like what he is. But then he was in a private school board meeting and something popped up on the screen behind him, and it was allegedly naked women. And I do have for you the news of the investigation into that, which seems a little excessive, but concluding. Before it, here was us talking about his press conference where he said, this is the governor, Kevin Stitt, who's also Republican, framing me. While you watch, please do click the subscribe button if you appreciate the work that we do. And if you want to go a step further, become a member, you can do it by clicking the join button as well, which is next to it. Very simple.
These board members have a lot to answer for, and so does the governor of the state of Oklahoma. Did he direct these board members to lie about me? Did he direct his board members to go in and disrupt everything in these board meetings? Did he have the board fight against bringing private schools into the state for families to have school choice? What exactly directives were they given? We have had our name cleared by both OMES and the sheriff's office.
The sheriff's office? I did see, take that down for a second, that you had Heartland Signal reporting Oklahoma Superintendent Ryan Walters under investigation for claims of video of naked women playing in office. On Monday, the Oklahoma Sheriff's Office confirmed that it's currently reviewing last week's State Board of Education meeting after the Superintendent Ryan Walters reportedly had a video of naked women playing in his office. Again, I hope it makes it a lot different if there was like a kid in there, obviously, but from all I could tell, it was adults meeting. If that information changes, then, you know, the story changes, but the sheriff, what's the sheriff investigating? So, my name is Ralph, and I'm the Oklahoma sheriff, and I'm working on 3 homicides, and then I'm also working on how nude were these women.
I'm gonna have to take that into evidence to review.
I'm gonna need to see the original copy. Could you print this out and mail it to me? Fax it to me? That's crazy. Mr. Sheriff, what's the status of the investigation? I'm still reviewing the relevant evidence.
The biggest load that we've seen.
Oh, wow. Okay, so he's being investigated. Very serious stuff. Let's keep listening. All right, and then I'll jump forward to this little part of it all.
Why people don't trust the news media. So many lies that they have run that are factually false and provably false.
How are they provably false? Look at my computer. Look. I only have nude giraffes on there. I don't know. I'm not into nude women. I only look at nude animals. What's the provably false? Fine. Take Becky to court. So Becky, just to jump in, is the board member who made this story public. I'm still a little confused on the controversy, but I like that he's in a controversy. Becky Carson to court, because that would be funny to imagine the Republican governor, Kevin Stitt, going to Becky, who is the person who told this story, and being like, all right, we need to take him down for some reason, even though we love what he's doing. Or maybe they have some political infighting. I don't really know. I don't really care. So here's what we're going to do. You're going to go to a board meeting, and when you leave, well, originally their idea was definitely to hack the TV. We're going to hack the TV. We're going to plug in our computer, and we're going to put up nude photos. And they're like, we don't really know how to do that. And they're like, can we get Elon on the phone? No. All right. That's the only guy we know who could do that. So instead, just lie and say that you saw something just terrible on the television. Becky's like, oh my gosh, really? I'm gonna lie and say something terrible, like what, a swastika or something? And Kevin's like, no, that might make him popular. I'm kidding. Among some of the voters, I'm kidding. And so they go, oh no. How about like something sexual? Because that maybe will really upset the voters. And Becky says, oh my gosh, something sexual, like what? Like just people humping each other? And then Kevin's like, no, that's gross. What about just like two nude women running, just like taking a jog? And Becky's like, okay, so if I'm hearing you correctly, you want me to come out of a board meeting and say that I saw on his TV two nude women running? He's like, that doesn't sound bad enough. What if you said like specifically what you saw? What if you said, like, you fit in the word nipple somewhere? That'll really catch people off guard. And Becky's like, okay, I guess I can do that. Doesn't seem to be quite a controversy. So that was the story that supposedly Ryan Walters, who's all caught up in these culture wars, and again, failing the poor students of Oklahoma. It's not their fault that their parents keep electing politicians like this, but he's waging these culture wars, and we're going to take down the woke teachers, and we're going to make sure you learn about the 2020 election. We're going to purchase Trump Bibles for the schools, and we're going to post up the 10 Commandments, and not actually helping their reading scores and their math scores, etc., and their chemical scores, as Trump would say. And so we do have some updates on this. It's a big story, is it not? He's alleging that the state government is trying to hurt him because he's being so brave in his position by creating this controversy. Becky Carson. So nudity on Oklahoma Superintendent's office TV was just a mishap, says the State House Speaker. As the investigation continues into claims that Oklahoma Schools Chief Ryan Walters had images of nude women on his office television during a meeting. When did nude women become a crime? That's my question. They're trying to make what illegal? They're trying to make, come on, play it. They're trying to make comedy illegal. We still don't have that? They're trying to make nude women illegal, Elon Musk would say. One state lawmaker's offering a possible explanation. It was just an unfortunate mishap, and it was a technical glitch. Okay, cool. Bizarre accident involving a newly installed television defaulting to a pre-programmed channel. Interesting explanation. We just got it from Best Buy, and Best Buy has just an automatic feature, and it's just two women running. Just because, the thing is they're trying to demonstrate the pictures, the pixels, and the colors that come through, and it's so distinct, and nothing shows that clearly enough as two women without clothing on. So that was one explanation that was offered. And then the Oklahoma County Sheriff's Office and the Oklahoma State Bureau of Investigation, you don't have better things to do, have concluded the investigation to State Superintendent Ryan Walters and are turning over their findings to the Oklahoma County District Attorney's Office. OCSO was asked to investigate the allegations by two board members. Snitch. On Tuesday, August 5th, you had the House Speaker saying that a third-party cybersecurity company performed a forensic analysis on the situation and compiled a 32-page report. This is iconic. A 32-page report. The report said that the TV was displaying a movie channel that played two movies that had moderate sex and nudity in them. Okay. I mean, I actually believe that explanation. I care very little, care more about the damage he's doing in his position. But the forensic analysis, guys, it's like the joke we made about the sheriff. They're like, hey, we asked you to analyze this issue with the television. Why is it taking so long? And they're like, it's a forensic analysis. We have to forensically analyze the images. Okay. Classic. And this is a part going back to what Trump is doing in all of his assaults on information, what Ryan Walters, sort of inspired by Trump, is doing, that we've seen for some time now. But now they just have a lot more power. Like Sarah Huckabee Sanders, I remember Ron Filipkowski some time ago posting this, announced that she's signed an executive order in Arkansas, she's the governor of Arkansas, banning woke phrases such as chest feeding, human milk, and birth a giver. I can tell you, Arkansas and Oklahoma really struggle education. I can't remember Arkansas, but Oklahoma is ranked 48th out of 50 states in pre-K through 12 education. Thank you, Jaden. So maybe the assaults on the woke, and it was a different term before woke, but that you've been doing for so long now, maybe that's the wrong approach. And a lot of the highest performing states in education are blue states, and it's the ones that you yell about being super woke. But just on the scores, the empirical evidence of their outcomes, they do much better than Arkansas or than Oklahoma. But at least in state documents, you can't have phrases like, what was it? Human milk? Human milk. The funny thing is, I know what they're trying to say, which is, there's the trans, right? A trans man makes milk, so it's a human milk, so we can't say human milk. We have to say women milk, which I don't hear often either, but like breast milk. But sometimes men, like biological males, also, I've heard of stories when people take steroids, like milk comes out, right? Is it milk or is it just a leaky faucet situation? Is it? I'm pretty sure biological males sometimes if they take certain, yes, men can lactate, though it's rare. Yeah, see? And typically occurs due to specific medical conditions, see? Or induced through certain treatments. Thank you. I got such a baffled look. While men do not normally lactate, also true, they can produce milk if their prolactin levels are elevated, which can be caused by factors like tumors, certain medications. So they're trying to ban recognition of people with tumors. That's pretty bad. And she did this press conference
to defend our girls across the state. They're using nonsense words to erase women and girls, and more importantly, to erase our voices and our experiences. Today, we're taking a stand against woke nonsense. What frankly started as a fad among a few grad students has seeped down into corporations, the healthcare industry, and increasingly state government. It's demeaning to women, and it needs to stop. In a moment, I'll sign an executive order banning a number of all sorts of ridiculous words from state government documents. Those include words like pregnant people, laboring person, birth giver, and several other nonsense terms that have cropped up in recent years. Some on the left will accuse us of being nitpicky, that Arkansas should just lay down and accept the cultural revolution without
Okay, so they banned it from state documents. I get the culture war around some of them. Birth giver is just cool. I was about to say based, and I was like, wait, we should ban based. Gosh, you know. Cole's like, we should ban Luke from saying Rizzy.
Fact check, true.
Thank you, Don Jr. But I get that, like, they go, don't say laboring person, just say laboring woman. Okay, cool. Or like pregnant people, just say a pregnant woman. Yeah, most people do, but whatever. Okay. But the birth giver, just, it makes them sound very supernatural. So that one I actually like, birth giver. Because what's just a pregnant lady, you know? But like, my wonderful birth giver. Giver of life. Giver of baby. Share your thoughts in the comments.